Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning,
Hi.
afternoon, wherever you are. Before we start the introduction from Nella, we would like to dedicate today's show to 4 individuals who sadly lost their lives in the past week, and those individuals are Robert Ennis, Rob, also known as Rob. He was a dedicated activist based in the South East London area, and sadly passed away at the age of 29. And also 3 other individuals, Dennis, Irvin, and Jethro, 3 cow individuals who resided at the Horse and Farm Animal Sanctuary in Wales. So we're just paying tribute to them, and we'll have a moment of silence at the end of the show. But today's show is in their honor.
You're muted.
You're muted, Nella.
Oh, sorry.
Hey,
Not as much as me.
1 a week.
Okay, then. So every day we come across human people who claim that love animals, and yet they eat them. And they're probably right. They love that that cat or dog with whom they live, and they would do everything to protect them. But how is this possible? How is it possible for anyone to snuggle on the couch with their beloved dog friend while eating a pizza that contains the flesh of a dead pig? The short answer is speciesism. But both experience and research suggest that we're not born speciesists. As young children, we love other animals and we would never think to harm them. So how do we end up eating our friends? And furthermore, how we go through life exploiting other animals without ever questioning our ways, even if we are confronted with the absurdity of it all. What is speciesism, in other words, and how it works? And someone could say that the most important question is how to dismantle speciesism. But in order to achieve that, we need to know our enemy. And thankfully, in this point of time, there are many academics and researchers who are trying to decode speciesism, and they are exploring the hows and whys of speciesism. And by doing that, they are giving us important information that can help us be more effective and resilient activists. And we're lucky enough to have 2 with us today. Dr. Yates is here as always. And for today, we are joined by Maria Ioannidou. Maria is a psychologist, and she's currently doing her PhD, and she's a researcher with Bradford University. And the focus of her research is human-non-human relations. So welcome, Maria.
Welcome. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you, Maria. Thanks for coming on. And Dr. Yates, of course.
Yes, I'm so pleased to be your guest today, everyone. we perhaps should say that we because of events we had a couple of last-minute changes, so bear with us, people. But we will get there and entertain you as ever. That's what it's all about, entertainment, isn't it? So are we going to do a few intros and then get going, I suppose?
Yeah, so there's quite a few people saying hello in the chat. So hi to Deb, and hi to Jennifer, Amber, Vegan Pixie Warrior, Linda Gordon, Vegemite Codbod. I love that name. Did I say Amber already? And I think that was everyone. Did I get everyone? I might have. If I've missed it. Oh, Ronnie. Sorry, Ronnie. Nearly missed you, Ronnie. I think that was everyone so far. Do say hello to us if you're here and you would like to say hello. And of course, we'll try and get through you. Hi, Carolyn, Marion. Hi to you. And we'll try and get through as many comments as we can as well throughout the show. So do share your perspectives with us. Angelica? Angeliki?
We've got Jennifer being cheeky already. Watch it, mates. Okay. Right. Now this is where I've lost my track in what we're supposed to be doing now. So what's next, people? Tell me.
So we're going straight into. Are we going straight into the presentation, the NIBET thing, or are we doing
No,
the?
I think we're talking about the horse and Sandra then.
Oh, we're doing that one. Okay.
Yeah. So so we just kind of like picked out some interesting issues of speciesism that have arisen. We were hoping to kind of cover this horse story that blew up about, I suppose, 2 weeks ago, and we kind of we were going to use it, and I think for 2 shows we didn't do it, so this is like the 3rd one. So we thought this is an ideal issue in terms of speciesism, because the furore, for people who don't know, we're not going to show the picture in case you're worried about that, but we're not I think a trainer, an Irish trainer, sat on a dead horse and to make a phone call, or to take a phone call, and then noticed someone had taken a shot picture and did the V sign, and that created an incredible amount of upset, to the extent that this guy has been banned from. I think the Irish board have banned him for 6 months, I think, and then I think a day after, a jockey was seen in a similar. Now I haven't seen the picture of the jockey. Anybody seen the picture of the jockey? Was that the same?
Pretty similar thing.
I think it's similar. It was maybe a video, but it was very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So but the issue was that there was a lot of outrage in the public about this picture, and of course we all know why. Total disrespect and everything. But from my perspective, I was thinking, hang on a second. Nobody's saying anything about all the people who are sat on the live ones, using their whips and their feet to kick them around, race courses all the time. So what's going on in relation to a great deal of public outrage of this disrespect for a dead individual, when there's hundreds of thousands of others who are alive, who presumably not getting a second thought? I mean, there just seems to be blatant double standards there straight away, And I know that some media picked up on it. Some of the Irish activists ended up on the radio and stuff, and I think some of them made that same point. Kind of, our concern right now is the individuals who are alive who are being oppressed, rather than the dead one who had been disrespected. And the other kind of facet of that, I think, is that I don't think there was any suggestion that the horse trainer had killed the horse and then sat on the horse. So it was interesting, what prompted this public outrage is the kind of interest from my point of view.
Would you say that maybe is the fact that it's considered normal to exploit horses in different ways while they are alive, but it's not considered normal to disrespect them after death?
Yeah, I think that's got to be some part of it. There is an interesting book from about 1973, I think it is. It's called Man and the Natural World, bit of a sexist title. And it's by a historian called Keith Thomas. And he talks about how there are some species who are privileged in human society. And one of those are indeed horses, along with others like cats and dogs, and even maybe parrots, I think were mentioned. And of course, when we were talking about putting this on the show, we were talking about all the statues that, Ireland is littered with statues of horses, and then there's horses in mythology. There's horses in very famous paintings. There's hero horses in terms of war, and then in terms of sport like Red Rum. So horses have got a special place, haven't they?
I went for a walk the other day in Dorking, where there's lots of like hills there. It's kind of known for walking and stuff. And a friend of mine who I was with, he said, "Oh, there's this tomb, like plaque, dedicated to a horse that was used for racing in the Second World War." And there's like this, it's like a famous plaque. And on the plaque, it said, I can't remember the name, but it just said they were an English thoroughbred. That was it, and it's the name of the horse. But just speaks to what you're saying about how they are revered.
Yeah,
this-
lens.
oh, go ahead, Roger.
well, in a kind of, as usual with humans, it's revered, but in a sense of the fact that they've also got utility. I mean, David Nybert talks about how they were used essentially as early kind of versions of tanks, you know, and so we've probably seen those kind of pictures of horses who have actually got kind of armor plating around them and that kind of stuff, you know, and you know, horses were kind of central to colonialism as well, so they revered at the same time they were seen as tools in a way. In fact, one of the first pieces of animal welfare legislation in the world was in Ireland, and it was called ploughing by the tail. And it used to be the case where they used to just attach a plough to the tail of a horse or a donkey or other type of draft animals, and that will rip their tails out. And so that was one of the first pieces of animal welfare legislation that ever passed, and it involved horses. Again, privileged species, but we always have to be a bit kind of cynical about what that really means, I think.
And it seems like there's a real long and entwined history with humans and horses, but there's also it kind of almost entangles with a love story with horses, because they are slightly revered in some ways. And people talk about, even people who are exploiting, using and seeing horses in that kind of functional utility mode, they talk about having a bond. There's a real bond with the horse, like the trainer and the horse, or the jockey and the horse, the person who might ride on the back of the horse. They talk about having that special bond. So in a way, I think there's almost a justification of, because we have a bond and we connect, and I really love this individual, it almost justifies that utility. And it's like Nella was saying, that then it's seen as normal. Riding on the back of a horse is seen as normal. It's so normal. It's ubiquitous in every film, TV program. You know, people are always riding on the backs of horses, or they're pulling a carriage, or you see them in city centres giving tourist rides, and it's just seen as such a normal relationship between humans and horses, and it's a very strange relationship, actually.
And does everybody think that all of what we've just said explains everything that was going on then in the public on that story? I mean, is there anything we've missed, as it were?
It's that etiquette, isn't it, of not mocking the dead, like paying respects to the dead, and we see that within humans as well. Like, stop it. You know, if you're driving along and you see a cortege of hearses coming along, you'll kind of stop, or you'll slow down, you'll be respectful. Or if you're standing on the road, sometimes people will even stop and watch and maybe bow their head. There's a real sense of etiquette for respecting the dead, and I think that's partly within this issue as well, is that people see someone sitting on a dead horse as very disrespectful and very mocking, even though, like you said, they're sitting on the back of a live horse is normal.
I think there's also. Oh, sorry, Nella.
No. Oh, go ahead.
I said that I think there's also a danger, given how awful the kind of images of this particular individual sitting on the horse, that it could invite, maybe from an industry perspective, invite too much inquiry, and which is why, you know, and too much kind of offering a mirror in terms of, like, this is how we view these animals, this is how we utilize these animals. So I wonder if that's in part the industry has kind of seen the potential problem that could cause if society questions it too much. That's why they're dealing with it harshly.
Yeah, I think that's a very strong point. I mean, it's almost like you've brought our industry into disrepute, and that means that people are going to look at us a bit more critically, and maybe look at in places where we don't want them to. So I definitely think that. Maria, from a psychological point of view, is there anything that you could maybe add to this idea about why the public was so upset about this picture of a dead horse, and yet what we do to live ones?
Well, I personally think that most of the people, they acknowledge horses as animals. They don't think they use them. They don't think they abuse them. Most of them, they even think that they have a therapeutic relationship with animals, that they help them in many disorders or any problems. They think they have this bond, and many people, they really admire horses. So we don't see and treat horses the same way we treat pigs. But for me, the most important thing is that we see them as individuals and acknowledge them, but of course they exclude the part of horse riding, using and abusing, so they don't really see that. So I think the sensitivity of a very different animal that people think they love and admire, on top of mocking a dead individual, I think it's what really outrages people. Because you see, like, again, to me, the most important thing is that, as I've said, that they acknowledge that there is a sensitive animal. They believe horses are very intelligent. And in the academia as well, they attribute more moral status to horses as well. So I think all that unconsciously, and of course the fact that it was a very mocking picture, it is a combination that caused so much outrage. They cannot really combine the dots that it is also an abuse of horse riding and using a horse, because people, they don't really perceive it that way. So I think from a psychological point, that's what really make them be angry. Obviously, they don't consider them as dogs and cats, because we don't see many people have horses as pets, but they see them as very admirable animals, and that's, I think, what really frustrates them as well.
So it's in a way it's the their relations, all other animals' relations to humans, that defines in a way their fate. I mean, we divide all other animals in categories, and we teach our children to view them that way. Animals that we eat, animals that we love, animals that we admire, animals who don't care about or consider as pests and we need to exterminate.
So yeah, horses are categorized as well, but they are categorized. To me, it's not so much that they're categorized, because every person besides the food animals, they can categorize horse in another category. Like some people, they might see them as pets, or some people in some countries, they might see them as food, because in some countries they eat horses as well. So in those countries, they might be quite different the way that they will, feel when they see a dead horse. But to me, I believe that the most important thing is that they see horse as animals, and that they feel the attachment, because, as you said in the introduction, most people learn with the ideology that we should love animals and that we did love animals. So I think the most important is that the rest of the animals that we use for zoos or for food, they don't acknowledge them that much as animals, while with horses that doesn't really apply. And because they see them as animals that they will never hurt, or they love them, they feel very outraged by seeing that.
So you mean that they see them more as individuals?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They acknowledge them, that they exist and they have their individuality. So if you observe a kid or an adult going to see a horse, they feel so admired by the horse. They are so skeptical of how to approach the horse. Obviously, it would lead to the relationship of using the horse and not respect the individuality of the horse. But it's different, the approach they have. I think it's not so much the admiration behind the horse that really make them outraged about mocking a dead.
It's interesting.
I think
Jonah brings up this point about it is regular, isn't it, in horse racing that individuals get they put the screens around them, don't they?
Green screen, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Wendy,
I
I butted in there. What were you going to say?
No, that's right, because I was going to say a similar thing. I think Maz the Gob, also that comment you brought up earlier, that was an interesting point as well, because there is that mythology that horses enjoy being used, and people will often say that, but they love being ridden. They really enjoy it, and they love running, and it's part of their exercise and it's part of their enjoyment. So there is that, and also this comment by Jonah, I think that's a really important point, because I think part of what's going on there is not the fact that this has happened, but it's the fact that it's really out there in the public. And actually the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board said that he acted in a manner which was prejudicial to the integrity, proper conduct and good reputation. And I think that's the point, isn't it? That it's now out there for public to see, because I think part of speciesism is that we can we can sort of deny what's going on because it's hidden. We can deny and avoid it because it's hidden away, whereas this brings it right into the public eye. And so that's what's really going on here as well. It's out there for us, and that's what brings some of that dissonance.
I think what's going on there is what Tom said, that they're furious with somebody for turning a spotlight on them, which they didn't want. On another contribution from Jonah, this is an interesting point, and I will acknowledge that the point I made about Ireland was from the Piers Byrne book, and he's a Welsh guy, but he's done most of his work he's a criminologist in North America, so I think he was talking about Europe and North America. So I did say one of the first, so I don't know if that gets me off any hook or anything, but there you go. So perhaps it's time to move on to the second issue then, and we're going to try to kind of curtail what we were originally going to do. I don't know whether we'll come back to this, but we're going to show a little clip. Well, I produced a video, but it's actually an audio clip from a radio show in the Republic of Ireland, where there is well-known radio journalist called Joe Duffy, and he's interviewing Sandra Higgins of Go Vegan World, and it's about one of the latest billboards where it said a terrified child is dying for your dinner, and you can see the kind of speciesism replete in his attitudes and the people who come after. We were going to talk about the choice of language in terms of claims making. We probably have to, time-wise, I think we'll probably have to leave that now for a little later. But I shall try to add this to the stream. And it's about 3.5 minutes long. And tell me, everyone.
And when Shay contacted him.
Yeah, just tell me if the volume's okay. Yeah.
On his way, he was plotting his planning his return to school on Monday and the journey, and he discovered these Go Vegan posters on his route, and among others, they say there's one of a sheep being stabbed with a pretty serious kitchen knife in the neck, and the slogan is "A terrified child dying for your dinner." And we Go Vegan, who pay for these ads, said they would come on. They're available now. Sandra Higgins, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Joe.
Who is the child that's dying for your dinner?
Well, most of the animals that we use, particularly as food, are killed at a very young age.
Who is the child that's dying for your dinner?
Obviously, the lamb who's being
killed. The lamb isn't a child.
Oh, the lamb is a child to the mother who gave birth to her.
The lamb isn't a child in the normal meaning of the word. That's what upset them.
You know, it should be standard farm practice to refer to mothers, fathers, sons and daughters.
As the lamb as a child?
Yeah. I always find it interesting, actually, Joe, to hear people, but they're surprised when they hear another animal being described as a child or a mother or a father or a son or a daughter, and yet we've no problem referring to, say, a chick at Easter as a baby chick, or a monkey as a mother or a baby monkey. It's only the species that we use that we find that we have this defense mechanism, and we find it objectionable because it reminds us that what we're doing is wrong. When we eat animal products, when we wear animal clothing, animals who are only a few months old, sometimes a few weeks old, are killed unnecessarily for it. And I think it makes us uncomfortable, and that's why.
Well, it makes you. Well, speak for yourself. You know what I mean? That's. I'm not saying whether I'm uncomfortable or not, but you're saying it makes you uncomfortable.
No, it makes the reason that people are defensive about calling another animal a child or a mother is because it reminds them that other animals have relationships the same as we do. They give birth, they look after their children, they have brothers and sisters, they have friends, they have emotions, they have feelings the same as we do. And that makes them uncomfortable when they're reminded that we kill them unnecessarily.
Okay. But you still send over the phrase, billboard says a terrified child, you say I'm referring to a lamb.
Yeah. And when we farm them, when we kill them, they have feelings the same as we do. I mean, that's a scientific fact. We're all animals. They're animals. We're animals. We all have a brain and a central nervous system.
And what do you think of people who do eat meat?
Well, so it's not so much what I think of them as I know that they lack information.
Well, do you think they're child killers?
What I'm saying is that they're not aware of the fact that other animals have feelings and that they don't want to die and that we have no need to kill them. So that the role of our ads is to remind people, because this is something that they generally don't think of. I know I was horrified when I realised it, and I couldn't believe that I had got to this stage.
So what do you think of people who eat children?
It's irrelevant what I think of them. I used to be one of them until just a few years ago. It's a lack of information that people are entitled to.
Peter Whelan is a well-known pig farmer. Peter, you're a child killer.
I'm a cannibal now, Joe, am I?
Well, you talk to Sandra. I'm not getting involved.
From mute, Roger.
Yeah, you're muted.
No, I didn't want to make Nella feel bad, so I thought I'd join.
Oh, thank you so much.
So kind.
Yeah. So what do we feel? Because I mean that's kind of speciesism writ large there. And as I put in the comment, there are just some words that we just want to have for ourselves. Murder is one. Persons often, people. You know, there are just some words which we kind of feel as though they can only refer to humans. And go ahead.
And it's
go ahead.
Sorry, was that you, Nella? No, I was just going to say with child, it does, even when you look up the word child, the first thing it says is a human infant. But I was just thinking about this the other day, actually, and obviously we've been exploring the language of it, and we were wondering whether the use of the word child actually disconnects the public from the message, because it just goes over their head and they don't even make that connection. But I just wondered, is it a similar thing to, for example, if you're saying woman, you wouldn't perhaps call an older cow a woman? As in, does it relate in that way? Because if you say a baby, it kind of makes it a relationship with the mother and baby. But would child be in a similar way to man and woman? As in, I sometimes say about Brian, he's a grown man, and it feels weird because it's like, well, he's not a man, but he's a grown adult. Do you know what I mean? Is it that similar kind of? I
don't think anybody would call a cow of any age a woman, but I do notice that farmers, for example, and I think the general public, they've got no problem about talking about mother cows being mothers. And so it's weird then that the mother's offspring, in other words, their child, is not allowed to have the word child attached to them. It's as though we're just giving too much at that point or something.
I think it's just we use language to reinforce speciesism, and we use language to socialize children in a speciesist world by referring to other animals as calves, for example, or to their flesh as meat or pork or whatever. So we do that with language all the time. And I think there is something very interesting Sandra Higgins said during the interview. She said that the people that object to the use of this language are reminded, in a way, they are reminded of what they are doing. So it's not that they see the billboard, the poster, and they are not affected by it. They obviously are. That's why they react. So I wanted to ask Maria, what kinds of mechanisms are there when you see a poster like that with the lamb and the knife? and you realize that a child is dying for your dinner. How can you deal with that and not go back home?
Marie, you can abandon your PhD now and do a new one on just on this radio interview, I would say.
Well, to be quite honest with you, it is quite interesting because it is similar with what Nella said. I don't know if I would pronounce it well. We know that with meat is euphemistic language that they use, so they try to take the meaning away. So instead of saying an animal or a dead body, they say meat, because they try to take away the whole meaning of what is really happening. And we can see that this practice, it's similar with the sociologist Bandura, that he has to do with moral disengagement. And it goes way back from people being killed for many years. So people still use language to take away the meaning. But because I'm not a sociologist, I will only speak about psychological facts, and I can leave Roger to do that. In terms of the psychological effects, what happened, I'm not 100% sure what psychological defense mechanism used in this example, because, well, someone needs to be shocked from what he or she heard. So they can, when they see the word children, they either can be very angry, they can neglect the word, they can feel that they are only entitled due to their superiority, that they can only use this certain word, which again, superiority is linked with speciesism. But in terms of many different psychological defense mechanisms people use, the most similar could be possibly be denial. So what has been also found in studies is that in order for people to deal with the cognitive dissonance they experience, which is about two contradictory beliefs, I love animals, but I eat them, just to make a point in here that doesn't apply to all people. There are some people that they never feel bothered or annoyed, so they never go through cognitive dissonance. So when they go through the cognitive dissonance and feel discomfort from what they do, which is a moral discomfort that is occurring, they have two options. So the first option is to either change their behavior and go vegan and not feel the discomfort from their actions, or change their beliefs and perceptions about the behavior. And the best way is to use psychological defense mechanism. So, for example, people deny that animals have the capacity to suffer, or deny that they have individuality and they have rights. And with denial, that is the most powerful mechanism. If you deny, then there is no problem. The problem still remains invisible, because if I feel bad that a pig is suffering, if I say to myself, well, you know what, the pig isn't suffering, so if it's not suffering, the action is not morally problematic, then I deny the truth, and then there is no problem in here. So I can easily deal with my behavior, continue use animals, eat animals, exploit animals, and be part of this behavior. While again with avoidance, that it's also very similar with denial, and both of them, they're very powerful mechanisms. People, they really avoid to know the truth. So with the billboard, that could be an example. Even unconsciously, people might want to know the truth of what is really happening. So, for example, many people in activism, they've seen that, when you want to speak with someone, they say, I don't want to know, please don't let me know, I don't want to be informed, I really don't want to know. And they practically embed the approach of look the other way. So if you, again, don't really acknowledge the problem, then there is no problem. Then again, with dissociation, we have to, in a way, blame society, because they know how strong is when you really link and make the connection with the animal and the food. And then for this reason, for all the society, they try to take away from the packaging. Let's go and see how they do the packaging of meat. So when an animal is when the meat or the food is resemble the animal that used to be, people getting shocked. So the whole dissociation is that they try to dissociate, not knowing, so they can have the illusion and they can enjoy their hamburger without really knowing that an animal is being served into their plate. Then we have justification, which tons of activists and tons of people, they deal every day with justification. So it is a bit similar with rationalization, but is is different. So with justification, they can use tons of excuses, actually. Like, it is very healthy. It is similar, again, with the horse, the example of the horse. With justification, they can say, yeah, but that's very good for us. We want to be close. Horses want to be ride, and they really enjoy that. So, or either they use justification like, it is normal, we ate meat forever, we are evolved to eat meat. So they're bringing rational answers to justify their behavior. But again, with justification, you can see that if in a way you trigger them, that's why they will want to justify their behavior. If you never say anything about their behavior, or if they don't acknowledge their behavior without wanting to admit their behavior, they will not use justification. So in a table with only meat eaters, if they eat animals, they will not justify their behavior. They will only justify their behavior when they know it is wrong. So as I've said, we have tons of justifications available out there. You can pick which one you want, and then tons of people, I'm sure, that they deal with justification every day that really makes them so angry. And then we have dichotomization, where people, they dichotomize animals, which is similar with categorization, but it's only two actual categories. So they dichotomize pets from wild animals, farm animals, and in this way they just feel that it's completely different. And then the most not very common ones, it's the objectification, which it is similar with Carol Adams and, sexual objects and how they objectify bodies. They objectify the body of an animal. So if it is as an object, then there is no problem. And the most important justification for me, which is not exactly a defense mechanism, but it's something that society allows us to do, is the individualization. So we don't see animals as individuals. And I think that's where activism needs to come in and really, in a way, try to acknowledge that animals are individuals. So people who use animals or exploit animals, they are not always the worst people. And to be quite honest with you, many slaughterhouse workers, without saying you should have empathy for all of them, they have to de-individualize the animals in order to continue to do their job. So it's not that all the people who eat meat out there or who use animals, they are bad. There are many different mechanisms behind that most of them, they might not even be aware of using them. They might be conscious, they might be completely unconscious. So there are many different psychological defenses that, if you really think, we use them to feel better. And I think that's the most strong point.
Maria, can I ask you a point on that, actually, on cognitive dissonance? Because I think it's used a lot in activism and advocacy, in that people will say to the public and say to non-vegans, you're in cognitive dissonance because you're holding to opposing beliefs. You say that you love animals, but you also still eat them, use them, wear them, all of that. Actually, one thing you said there is that unless people see that it's wrong, they're not in cognitive dissonance. And the way I understood it when I was kind of looking more into this is that cognitive dissonance is not automatic. I think this is what you were kind of saying as well, when a person holds opposing beliefs, because they must have an awareness of the inconsistency in order to feel the discomfort. But what got me thinking is that actually people have to actually see that their beliefs are opposing. Whereas if you've been socialized to a point where you see things are normal and society tells you this is normal, and we've got a deeply embedded speciesism, that actually people don't see that as opposing beliefs. They don't see that eating a pig is an opposing belief to having a pet dog, because they see that as totally different beliefs. It's like their beliefs are it's okay to eat a pig, and it's normal to have a pet dog. So they're their beliefs. For that person, that's not an opposing belief. So therefore, there isn't any discomfort around that, which is why people seem to be able to behave in that way. Does that make sense? Have I got that right in any way?
It makes sense, and I agree. And even until today, it hasn't been scientifically proved that there is cognitive dissonance, but they also took the meat paradox, so they're the two opposed beliefs, and believe that when people deal with the moral discomfort, which is a cure from the two inconsistent beliefs. That's where psychological defense mechanisms come in and play. So you can either see them as psychological defense mechanisms or as cognitive dissonance strategies. To me, the point is that even if you realize your cognitive dissonance, you still need to be confronted. So if no one ever tells you anything, and if you don't really be aware of what is really happening, then you don't use them in the first place. So for me, there must be a stimulus that will make you realize that, oh, hold on, what is really happening? Is this a pig? Is this baby actually feeling pain? And if so, then they start to justify and rationalize and deny what is happening to take completely away them. Because we haven't really observed how, for example, meat eaters, they experience this dissonance. We don't know if they go home and feel that they experience discomfort. We don't know if they feel sad. We know that, and we can see that from activists as well. And actually, I can exclude activists for a second. I will briefly say to you a very quick experiment. So they've categorized people in two different conditions. Both groups that they took part in the study, they were eating beef, otherwise cow, but I'm just telling how the study was set up. And they were in the experimental condition that the people, they will eat either cashew nuts, and in the other condition, they will eat actual beef. But in both conditions, people were eating meat. But in one condition, it was only nuts, the other was it was only beef. And after that, they've asked them to rate the moral standing of cows and whether they believe that cows can experience pain or if they are, capable in autonomous rights. People that they were on the cashews condition, they attribute more status to cows than people who were in the beef condition. So that really shows us that even when they are both in the same pattern, they eat animals, depending on where they are and the condition they are, they try to justify their behavior by denying in one condition that they can experience pain, similarly to the other. So we don't quite know, well, at least I don't know whether it's conscious or unconscious, but people use them without sometimes understanding them. And of course, they are influenced by society as well, because we know that it's normal, we know that it's natural, we know that we're doing this for years, and there is no reason of actually, saying why not. We're doing that. Our ancestors used to do it. There is no problem doing it. But once you see that the problem is morally problematic, then you either change it or you bring the psychological defense mechanism. Because if you ask anyone, would you harm a pig? They will say no. So those are the inconsistent beliefs that they pay someone else to harm the animal so they can eat the animal. But in the first instance, they will never say yes. Most of the times, they will never say, I want to harm the animal to eat the animal.
So it's that disassociation, isn't it? They manage to, someone else does it so that they can be disassociated and distance from that act, from the other animal themselves, and also from the process that the other animal has to go through to become the product, the meat or the shoes or the handbag or whatever it might be. They're totally disassociated with that.
The only lacking thing in this area is that we mostly focus on the food, and we know less about leather, how they use them, use animals in other content. But even if many meat eaters in the past, if they order a red steak and they see a lot of blood, a lot of them, they will feel disgusted. The reason why they will feel disgusted is because disgust is a moral emotion, and they link that with blood. So you see, again, if you observe from different studies, that when they see something that resembles the animals or blood, the dissociation is lower, while when they see the hamburger, the dissociation is higher. So society has managed to achieve dissociation in any way, either for language or the way that they present the use of animals with food, entertainment, clothing, anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Deb's brought an interesting question. I think this ties in to you, Roger, Dr. Roger Yates, into your sociology. Why do North Americans think it's terrible for Asians to eat dogs, but it's okay to eat pigs, cows, chickens? So maybe that could bring us onto the socialization a little bit.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about privileged species again, so and that alters from culture to culture. In particular, I mean, in Japan, for example, foxes are seen as rather sacred beings, and obviously we know what we do with them in Europe. So there is that kind of there's a global differences, but there are always a question of some we revere on some level or other, and there's some that we exploit. And then going back to one thing that Tom said, I think about the categories idea is that there are some that we regard as pests or vermin. And they tend not to get much moral consideration whatsoever, those ones, but they can change depending, again, on the location, so it's a globalized kind of problem in a way. So I'm a bit conscious of the time, folks. So I did, let me just turn this off. I did prepare a kind of PowerPoint, which I then made into a film because I've got a technical problem with my PowerPoint at the moment. And so I'm not quite sure if we've really got time to go through this now. So I think what I might try and do, this is David Nybert, and that's the book that we're dealing with. And he says something about speciesism, which is very interesting from a sociological point of view. Now I'm gonna try and skip a bit, brother, as they say in Monty Python, and try to find okay, so let's try and go back.
I think Roger, I think we have time, and it answers a very important question: what is speciesism? And we have not answered that question yet.
All right, and okay, so let's let me not look for that. If people have difficulty seeing this, it might be best to put your screen into full screen. And if you want to make a comment, you have to drop out of it and do it. So this is Nybert, right? And he's basically talking about the 1960s. And he says that the idea that prejudice is the primary cause of oppression was challenged. And because prejudice kind of puts the locus of oppression in the individual. And sociologists want to challenge that, or at least question that. And he also says, and discrimination is action, differential and unequal treatment of the member of a specific group solely because they are members of that group. So this is where sociology comes in, that there was a challenge to that in the 1960s, this kind of micro thing about, kind of individual prejudice held in the individual, and then there was a move towards a more institutional lens. And he says that racism, as well as sexism, classism, and the like, are ideologies. So that's described as various types of prejudice and discrimination are outgrowths of these individual ideologies that are created to protect privilege, which is kind of, I don't know, he's kind of talking about his Marxist position there, I suppose. But he says that some social justice writers avoid using the term oppression and oppressed groups because they believe that treats devalued others as passive victims. Now, Nybert argues against that. He says he understands that position and he respects that position, but he's reluctant to downplay the term oppression. And so he wants to keep oppression as a term. And he also says that in terms of speciesism, he promotes what he calls a second theoretical adjustment that's needed in understanding speciesism properly. Now, what he's basically saying is the movement, the animal movement, is not looking at speciesism in its fullest sense. They're using the more psychological, the more individual-based kind of things. He says to include other animals in the realm, theoretical realm of oppressed groups means rethinking the meaning of speciesism. So that was one of Nybert's first kind of tasks, if you like, in this book, which is called Animal Rights, Human Rights, and that. So we're back to thinking about prejudice. Nybert claims that the view that speciesism is an individually located prejudice is strong in the animal movement, and we see that in a lot of people's writings. However, he says the view that speciesism is prejudice hampers somewhat the analysis of the social structural causes of the oppression of other animals. And so he's basically trying to argue that the way that the movement has approached the issue of speciesism is only partially effective, and with a sociological understanding, then the understanding of speciesism can be richer. Essentially, that's what he's trying to argue. And because he's a sociologist, he wants to turn his focus on the institutions. So he says that if you look at the written work of the movement, so Richard Ryder, the person who coined the word speciesism, who was a psychologist, Peter Singer, Tom Reagan doesn't get missed out in terms of critique on this one, and Kim Stallwood, which some people in the chat will know, others might not. They all seem to go with this initial kind of individual-based idea. So the locus of speciesism within the movement is the individual. And so he gives this example from Animal Liberation, published in 1975. Speciesism is a prejudice or attitude of bias in favor of the interests of members of one's own species and against those of members of other species. Sorry, I'm going so quick, folks, but I'm a bit short of time. Yeah. So that Singer, he then talks about a dictionary definition, I believe is coming up. Yeah. Oxford English Dictionary, this is from 85. Speciesism, discrimination against or exploitation of certain animal species by human beings based on an assumption of humankind's superiority. Obviously, 1985, they said mankind on that. And I think we've got one other example. Just give it a couple of seconds to change. Okay, so he's saying basically that he's agreed with part of these, what he calls exceptional writers' argument, that they're right to suggest that speciesism and other forms of oppression are comparable, or in Nybert's own terms, he would say entangled. But there is a kind of however to that, and this is coming up next. Anytime now, folks. Anytime now, folks. Anytime now. Oh, oh, I got to press the button. I got to press the button to make it work.
Oh.
1, 2, 3. Hey.
Way.
So, yes. So he says that most sociologists consider racism as well as sexism, classism, and other isms to be ideologies. That is, that they are neither prejudice nor mistreatment, although you could argue they involve those. Rather, an ideology is a set of socially shared beliefs that legitimates an existing or desired social order. And so this is where we're starting to move towards ideas about culture and ideas about being born into a deeply speciesist society. It's not just that you're going to find some species individuals. It's the fact that everyone is born into that society, and to some extent, vegans have gone to the trouble of kind of trying to escape that, and other people find it very difficult to do. Nybert's quoting somebody else here, which is Donald Noel from that 1972 book. As an attitude, prejudice is a characteristic of an individual, not a cultural structure. So that's the critique, that we should be focused on the culture. It may be very widespread, common attitude, but its locus nonetheless remains the individual, and it is not analyzed in terms of institutional processes, but in terms of psychological processes. So again, this is a critique of what is common in the movement and what is needed to enrich our understanding of the idea of speciesism. That's what's being argued here. Should be changed. Oh, okay. And so this is the bit that I picked out here, which is from a dictionary of sociology that's fallen to bits. And so this is interesting, this one, because ideology said that 1, any system of ideas underlying and informing social and political action. 2, more particularly, any system of ideas which justify or legitimates the subordination of one group by another. And then 3, which is a bit of an interesting contradiction, or at least tension here, and all-embracing encyclopedic knowledge capable of breaking down prejudice and of use in social reform. Now, what they say in this dictionary is that the third use is the original use of the word ideology, but 1 and 2 are now the dominant uses. And so ideology was seen as a pretty good tool for people like social movements, for example. So you can think about the Marxist ideology or something like that, feminist ideology. These things would challenge things. Whereas now ideology is seen as a kind of bit of a break on social change, because it's kind of embedding dominant structures into society. And so so this is me, Roger Yates, 2001, right now, in front of your very eyes. So this is why I'm always banging on ever and ever about cultural speciesism, and claiming that cultural speciesism, and to understand that as the power of it, if you like, is our number one target. And I've always said that if we can't really do much about cultural speciesism, in other words, the system of beliefs and ideas that everybody is born into, then the other animals are only going to get at best a little bit of animal welfare here and a little bit of animal welfare there. It's not going to change much. We need a complete kind of paradigm shift in the way that we look at our relationships with other animals. And we can only get that is if we can attack, undermine, and transform the culture. So that's why I'm always banging on about that. And going back to what Noel said about institutional processes, one of the strongest, as Maria said before, are socialization processes. And another thing in terms of what Maria said earlier is I very much agree with what she said about denial. One thing I say sometimes in my talks is that we are very good, human beings are absolutely brilliant at denial. It's one of the things that we're absolutely excellent at. And it's one of the things that are a problem for us, as social reformers, let's call us that, if you like, to do something about. So sorry that was very quick, that we're short of time, as you can see, 3 minutes left, really.
It's really interesting though, Roger. I really, that presentation is really interesting, and actually it got me thinking, just even then when you were showing that, is that I think we can see that speciesism is an ideology when we think of ourselves even as vegans and animal rights activists, in that we're not prejudiced perhaps against other animals because we've changed our paradigm in a way, and we're moving out of that system, and yet we are still within the system of speciesism. We still find ourselves having speciesist attitudes that we have to still work on all the time, attitudes that are just seem completely normalized, and that you suddenly look and go, oh my God, I've just said that, or I've just done this, and actually that's a speciesist thing to say or do, and you find yourself doing that. But that just shows you how deeply we are ingrained in these systems and these ideologies. So it isn't just an individual prejudice.
So I'd like to invite our special guest panelist, Maria, as a psychologist. First of all, what do you make of that? But also, would you kind of agree with me that probably what you need is a blend of the two approaches in order to get the fullest understanding of what's going on?
Well, I think those two is like the book of Nyberg, that animal rights and human rights are entangled. So I think sociology and psychology are entangled, and we need both approaches to really make it work. And I believe in a way that's why we even have social psychology as a core module, because we look about society and about tons of things that are going on without even knowing. But to me, the most important thing is those two to be able to work, but it's more about educating people. Like, it is still very shocking in 2021. There are so many things that people don't know. And I think there is not only one approach, that there are many ways to approach someone. And I'm sorry, but my cat.
Oh, don't worry about that. We're used to that.
This is Tokyo, everyone.
Tokyo, yay!
So I would definitely agree with you that we need both. And I think, especially for people that they are vegan and activists, we need to educate more and be able to pass that to other people as well, and work with ourselves and really look that there are many things we need to consider. Socialization process, categorization, how speciesism is embedded, the language we use. So I think, yeah, those two, I completely agree with you. They should just go together.
I think sometimes there's a risk, isn't there, that you focus too much on one of those things and neglect the other. But yeah, like you said, Maria, I think that they are entangled, and we need to kind of pay the right amount of attention to them when we're advocating, for sure.
I mean, you can use psychology and look about individual differences and personality differences and how people, they really relate in the out group. I'm sorry, I mean group. But people, they are not intact, they are part of society. So that's where we need sociology to bring in and explain what really is happening. So I think those two, they always should go together.
Well, we're kind of out of time, really. I think we've done what we usually do, Wendy, which is bite off more than we can chew, and so we probably should have done half of what we did. So maybe
Keep trying to tell you this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because you're not guilty of it at all, are you? So that's good. I want to thank Maria, and given the fact we didn't do much, we might be calling on you again sometime. We seem to have this way of spreading one show out into two nowadays.
So many things in one show anyway. So I want to thank you as well for having me, and I'm very happy to come a second and a third time as well.
Okay, so we're gonna finish off then with this. Getting back to reality, I suppose. Finish off with our minute silence. Tom, do you want to remind us of the reason?
Yeah, just as I said at the beginning of the show, today was a tribute dedication to 4 individuals who lost their lives. Rob Ennis lost his life a few days ago, sadly at the age of 29. Very dedicated and active, enthusiastic activist, well known in Croydon and Southeast London, and three other cow people, Dennis, Irvin, and Jethro, who sadly lost their lives recently. They resided at the Horse and Farm Animal Sanctuary in Wales. So I think the whole community is is feeling the loss of these people, and yeah, we just wanted to kind of let everyone know and others know that they're in our thoughts, and felt it was appropriate to close the show with a minute's silence, like you said.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to mute myself and do that then. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.